We have, over the course of the last, I would say, 2 decades, seen increasing incursions in our way of life as a result of climate.
No country has been spared the effects of changing weather patterns, but developing countries and island states in particular are facing the brunt of climate change while not really having contributed much to the problem.
We have had, for example, increase in droughts, in our case in Barbados, and I call the droughts and the water shortages the chronic NCDs of the climate crisis, and the hurricanes are the heart attacks. And of course, we are in the heart attack season, but what makes it worse is that we learned as kids to be on standby from June to end of October, and we now have 2 extra months every year. So that for most of our small island developing states, we're facing the spectacle of floods or hurricanes or high winds for more than half the year.
Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados and Madagascar's Minister of Economy and Finance, Richard Randriamandrato, joined IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva to discuss the effects of natural disasters on these communities and economies and how policies should be designed to help countries adapt to this new reality.
So these things are real. And if we have to spend money there in order to deal with these things, it means we're not spending money on the SDGs and the other development goals.
Madagascar is not a small island. It's the biggest island in the world, with a lot of challenges as regard to disaster risk. And we are also facing, unfortunately, the same challenges as small islands. The cost of these damages, for example, during the last 10 years is about $2.5 billion. That is a lot of money.
We are living in a more shock-prone world, and climate change is aggravating the frequency and intensity of disasters. I am very humbled to be on the same panel with those who are virtually on the front line of dealing with the consequences of natural disasters compounded now by COVID-19. For tourism-dependent economies, COVID has been devastating. And for us at the IMF, that recognition that we are all vulnerable, but the level of vulnerability in some countries, because of size and because of location, is much higher. And therefore, our attention ought to be concentrated on where the needs are most severe. The evidence is clear. $1 invested in disaster resilience in adapting to this changing climate brings $4 to $7 in damage prevented. In other words, it is a worthy investment to save lives, to protect livelihoods, but also to reduce the cost that comes from disasters.
But while countries like Barbados and Madagascar face increasingly devastating cyclones, hurricanes, and droughts, the global pandemic is also weighing heavily on public finances.
Our debt has gone from 177% to 118%, and it has gone back up now to 152%, largely as a result of the pandemic. And the majority of that is not because of increased borrowing, but because of contraction of our economy. Kristalina said just now that the tourism-dependent countries have been among the hardest hit. Let me put it even in further context. The only countries that have been worse hit than us last year are war-torn countries. Our declines have been double-digit in most instances in the Eastern Caribbean. They hover around 18-19%. In Aruba, 25%. In Maldives, 33%. So that this thing has reversed us at least by a decade in terms of nominal terms, but more like 2 decades in terms of real losses. You can always bring back down debt as we've shown, but what we can't do is reverse the social implosion, which invariably takes a generation to reverse.
Climate change is a reality, today's reality, and it will take time to reverse the devastating effect of the climate change. This is a global issue, and therefore this is a global responsibility. We, as islands, small islands or big islands like Madagascar, we have nothing to do. To be honest, we have nothing to do with global emission of carbon, for example. So yes, we take our part of responsibility, but this must be done in accordance to international arrangements and so on.
Fundamentally, to ask countries to have to carry the cost of borrowing for something that they did not start, for something that they did not do. And in circumstances where, because of that cost of borrowing and that fiscal space that is eaten up, that it means that we can't get on to basic issues of education and housing and healthcare and those other things that are critical to the SDGs, critical to good governance, critical to being able to create a better quality of life. All of those things are being taken up because we have been diverted and having to face the reality of the climate crisis by the actions and greed of others elsewhere in this world.
One of the big things we have done early in this crisis is to recognize that reserve requirements in the world have gone up, and that the COVID crisis has pushed countries to exhaust very often very limited reserves they counted on. When your economy shrinks by 10%, and at the same time you have to increase spending because of the pandemic, that of course makes you dip into your reserves to a dangerous level. So we have the agreement to have $650 billion new SDR allocation. It is going to be in place by mid-August. It would help all countries, but of course it is most valuable for countries with limited reserves and in vulnerable positions.
We are facing additional expenditures at the very time that the pandemic has removed from us just about a third of our revenues. So I don't even need to explain further to you what that has meant. And let me just say before this finishes, because I really want to thank IMF, Kristalina. Without the IMF working with us and without the debt restructuring we did before the pandemic, God knows where we would be today.
The most immediate relief that comes from the SDR allocation is this boost of reserves that countries will receive. And it is at no cost to anyone in the membership. This is deploying the strength of the collective to create this reserve asset called special drawing rights. We are in a very difficult place as a world. We are faced with dangerously diverging recoveries. Advanced economies on the backs of fiscal space and vaccination are growing this year much faster than emerging markets, developing countries with limited fiscal space and slow vaccinations. So we have an incredibly important job to do this year, next year, to bring this divergence back to a place when the whole world is growing. And if I may, if we succeed, the economic benefit is huge. We would get $9 trillion more in output between now and 2025 if we overcome this dangerous divergence. SDRs, part of the solution. And believe you me, I so much take it to heart to make them work to the fullest for the membership.
What is important is solidarity. Facing climate change is not only about money. It's not only about concessional loan. It's not only about the IMF responsibility. It's collective and public awareness vis-à-vis the future of our planet. We're not going to return to, 100 years ago. We are now facing the new realities. And therefore, we have to adapt our policies to that new reality. And above all, we have to make sure that new generation also adapt their state of mind to that new reality. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, technology is sometimes pushing us to think differently, but we shall continue to make sure that le bon sens, as we say in French, the bon sens, the good sense, govern the world, rather than, the interest of capitalism or the logic of economic productivity and so on.
That was Madagascar's Minister of Economy and Finance, Richard Randriamandrantho, and Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados discussing with IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva the impact of climate change on island states. Go to imf.org to watch the webcast of the entire event. And look for other IMF podcasts wherever you listen. You can also follow us on Twitter at IMF_podcast. I'm Bruce Edwards. Thanks for listening.